in a 10 soap opera. One fun fact about Michael Afton, actually I don't know if this is fun or if we should actually be afraid, is that he loves the soap opera The Immortal and the Restless, a vampire parody of The Young and the Restless, and I'm assuming Twilight maybe, because of the vampires. I don't actually know where Scott stands on the franchise. Anyway, I'm not sure if we should be amused by his constant watching of the show or afraid, since him watching that show keeps his attention so bad that he doesn't hear Enard come into his house, and he's just able to crawl in front of the TV while Michael just sits there. No running, no surprise, he just sits there watching Immortal and the Restless. People also seem to think that this is alluding to Michael's relationship with William, saying potentially that the child isn't his. I mean, that is a possibility, but what if it's true, and when William found out he killed the mother, hence why she isn't around? But that doesn't really make any sense, because if he was willing to kill the mother, he wouldn't have kept the kid. Either way, the way Michael gets distracted by a soap opera is scary. Not because it's a soap opera, because he's so distracted he doesn't hear a 7-foot-tall animatronic walking into his house. In a 9 Torn identity. Michael, while not going by many names, has had many different identities over the years. While now most of us know who he is, there is a whole section of the community that thinks that Mike is Springtrap. Hell, according to the security logbook, Michael may not even be his real name. Over the years, Michael has gone by Foxy Bro, Crying Child, Purple Guy, Springtrap, and Mike Trap, but they have all been Michael Afton. We don't know why he may not remember his name, and we may not know for certain what's really going on in this series, but I can tell you that 100% he is not Springtrap, okay? Mike Trap is not a thing. Scott Cawthon confirmed it himself in reference to a MatPat theory about FNAF 6, saying to pay attention to his take on the Mike Trap versus Will Trap debate, and Matt did in fact prove to us that Mike Trap is impossible, since when Purple Guy was first introduced in FNAF 2, he had been able to drive since Fredbear's Family Diner, which Mike would 100% not have been old enough to do. Plus, if it was Mike in the Springtrap costume, he wouldn't have been able to set the souls of the other children free like he was doing, because he would have been trapped in the safe room. And it ain't mirror image. We learned from Mike's final monologue in Sister Location that Mike actually looks a lot like his father, saying the animatronics didn't recognize him at first, but then they thought that Mike was William, which explains why the animatronics are coming to kill us in the games and why the toy animatronics come after us in FNAF 2. Because we play as Mike in all those games. Because since now they have William as a killer and they're all looking for him, but instead they find us, his son, Michael Afton, which kind of throws out the whole we aren't his son thing, unless you think about the Crying Child as the one who isn't the son. But in that case he wouldn't say I'll put you back together, even though he could be someone else who says that, and who knows anymore. Not even MatPat, and we rely on MatPat to get these things right. At least I do. I rely on it. Notice me, senpai. Just comment in all the game theories. Tell him to check out Top 10 Gaming. Love you, MatPat. Don't copyright strike me. And at 7, moral differences. Now, while William and Mike may look alike, that's the only thing they have in common. Genetics aside, these people aren't related in the slightest. If you think about it, these two are the opposites of each other. One is corrupt and kills as a second nature, and the other is trying to repent, making up for his father's crimes as well as his own wrongdoings. We don't know why William started killing, it's all just speculation, but we know why Mike began hunting down the spirits of the children and started setting them free, to make up for his father's mistakes and to let his brother have the peace he deserves. The two characters juxtapose each other, and this is even more reinforced when you remember that they did look exactly alike, so much so that the animatronics actively try to enact revenge on Mike, thinking that he's William. Even though they look identical, they are on the opposite sides of the spectrum of human decency, and while yes, Mike started off bullying his younger brother, once he got his brother killed, that's when he found his way. It's sad, but at least they can rest now. And at 6, he can't die. It's established in Sister Location that Mike isn't able to die via any normal means. When he got scooped and injected with Remnant, as explained via the Remnant reservoir that the scooper has, and thanks to Baby telling him he won't die after Enard escapes his now rotting body. However, even though he is rotting, smelling disgusting, and becoming more ghastly every day, he's still kicking. Or at least he was, until Pizzeria Simulator. Now, how is this? Well, it's thanks to the Remnant in his body. The Remnant that he was injected with in Sister Location's final moments actually saved his life. His body was dead, but his soul was still preserved, infusing him with a form of soul metal powered by agony that can only be destroyed with fire, or overheating. And you may be thinking, if he was injected with Remnant, doesn't that make his body possessed by a soul that isn't his? And while this would be true for anyone else, scooping would be incredibly painful and cause an intense amount of agonizing pain. But you also need to remember, he's with his dead family. He just found out that his sister possessed the circus baby animatronic, and his brother, probably fairly recently, just got killed by the spring lock failure. So he's dealing with a whole lot, to say the least, and to say that he's in agony is probably an understatement. So it's very possible that he infused his soul with the remnant injected and just took control. That's not that far out there when it comes to the series. Halfway through and in number 5, Burned. However, despite his ultimate soul power, he eventually does die during the fire in FNAF 6, also known as Pizzeria Simulator, where Henry gives his final monologue to close out the first 6 games, or the Purple Guy saga, or at least we thought. We then see him return in the form of Glitch Trap in FNAF VR, but that's a whole other video. And literally, we did a top 10 scary Glitch Trap facts, so you should go check that out too. After this, of course. But as I described my last number, the only way he could die was through burning, which Henry makes sure of when he burns the joint to the ground with William, Baby, aka Elizabeth, Molten Freddy, aka Enard, Lefty, containing the puppet, aka Charlotte, Henry's daughter, and you, playing as Mike inside. The only question I have about this is, did we know we were gonna burn down? Obviously, we wouldn't be talking about it outright with Henry since, you know, arson is illegal, and if anyone were to stumble upon their operation, special obligations under paragraph 4 sounds better than you found an animatronic we need to burn. Especially when you take into account that these animatronics are possessed and have minds of their own. They don't want to be destroyed. So it would make sense as to why they'd keep it secret, but it could be Henry keeping secrets from us as well. I personally always thought that we knew that we were gonna burn and that we had just accepted it because we'd get to see our family again and they'd be put to rest. Also because, you know, we're a walking hunk of rotting flesh that was used as a meat suit for a robotic endoskeleton, and I don't think there's a therapy for that. And at 4, Scooped. We all know that Mike got scooped at the end of Sister Location, if you got the right ending. However, what we probably didn't know, at least until FNAF 6, is how the scooper worked. The scooper has 4 different parts to it. The excavating arm, which is the worst name for a scooper imaginable, the remnant injector that leaves a trace line of remnant on the interior of the subject, the arm, base, and balance, and the remnant reservoir. And this blueprint is also where we learn that negating the effects of remnant requires heat. In the notes it says that when heated, the metal has no observable motion, that the heated tank should be kept at a sustaining temperature that makes the metal malleable but nothing more liquid than that, because overheating might neutralize the effects permanently, as well as using the scooper too much. As the notes on the injector says, overusage/overexposure negates the effects. If Mike had scooped Enard out of him, he might have just been able to die instead of living in agony. Getting close to the end in number 3, he killed his brother. This is a fairly obvious thing, but this is also one of the most horrifying things imaginable. I wouldn't be able to handle directly being the cause of a family member's death. If I was Mike and I had put my brother into the jaws of a creature he was so terrified of that he started crying so much the jaws closed and crushed his skull, I wouldn't be able to handle it. I wouldn't have been okay ever again, okay? Just the thought of this makes me want to hug my sister. Sure, her and I fight and yeah, I pick on her, but there's no way that I would have forced her into a terrifying situation unless it was for YouTube content and she was willing. But by no means would I throw her into the mouth of anything. I was going to make a joke and say aside from a lion, but I can't even joke about that. That sucks. And at 2, Purple Guy. Remember how I mentioned earlier that people thought Mike was the killer? Well, that's because of Scott's old tricks. In the final scenes of Sister Location, where we see Mike walking along after his Enard injection, we see him slowly get more purple and start to collapse, until eventually he is pure purple and so broken that Enard has to evacuate faster than your Tinder date. He stood up after Babysitter multiple times that he won't die, but this has caused a whole bunch of people to believe that he is actually the purple guy, that he is the killer. This is simply not the case. Yes, there are 2 purple guys, but only one of them is actually physically purple, that being Mike. Mike is actually purple, even though being green would make more sense because that's what everything rotten is colored, but whatever, Scott. William is the one and only purple guy, but he is purple because that's meant to represent a shadow in minigames that have a black background. And in Atari-style games, purple was used to indicate shadows because in a way it's more realistic in some cases. It's hard to explain. They aren't the same person, I promise. Okay, as I said earlier, Scott confirmed it himself. Finally, in at number 1, he is the brother. Hey, brother. Now I've been talking this whole time about how Michael is the big brother, and some of you may be confused. At first we thought he was the brother until the survival logbook gave us questions like, does he still talk to you, in reference to psychic friend Fredbear, and lines like the party was for you. Since the crying child's party is where he ended up dying, we thought that Mike was actually the crying child, and the promise of I will put you back together came from William, who literally put him back together as a robot. But now we're back to his brother. Why? Actually, it's because of the latest Fazbear Frights book and the similarities between the main character of Paul from one of the stories and Foxy Bro, as MatPat called him. If you haven't watched that theory, I highly suggest you do. Matt will explain it better than I can in this short amount of time because the script is already really damn long. But basically, the similarities prove that Mike is actually the gray-shirted big brother. But honestly, I think that the two kids may be the same person, but that's something I'll have to discuss on my own stuff.
And it said sister location. Sister location is kind of where this idea started for me. The fact that Baby knew Michael wouldn't die is interesting, since in a way he did. His flesh started decaying. However, everything from sister location is kinda sus when you think about it. In the end, Michael gets scooped by a machine that was only meant to remove robot parts from animatronics. Plus, when he gets scooped, there's no blood on the scooper and nothing comes out. They also don't scoop again, indicating to me that perhaps Enard was surprised with what he found. Plus, we've seen Enard. We know that he's basically a giant flying spaghetti monster without the flying part. And if Michael already had an endoskeleton, he could have just wrapped himself around that instead and just worked like normal. That would also explain the Enard spaghetti Michael vomits in the post-credits cutscene. That pile of scrap only has one purple eye, mind you, yet after Enard leaves, Michael can still see. How could that happen if all of his organic parts were removed? They wouldn't intentionally leave behind eyes and functioning parts if they weren't his to begin with. And at 9, Enard. Let's talk about Enard some more now. Not only does Enard have more than enough eyes and some spaghetti appendages that would wrap around an endoskeleton, but his voice also changes to a more robotic voice after entering Michael.
Father, it's me, Michael.
Why? It's not like Enard is the one speaking. Michael is talking to his father. My guess is that Enard, in the process of wrapping himself around Michael's body, disrupted or hit the part of his mechanism that lets him talk. His voice box, I guess you could say. The idea that there is a specific part for this doesn't come out of nowhere. In Freddy's Parts and Service minigame in FNAF VR, you have to replace Freddy's music box. And since Afton was the one who made the animatronics, at least in the games, he would have done the same thing to the robot's son that he was making. And it ate secret intel. There's also a matter of what Crying Child saw prior to his death. There is a reason for the fear of the animatronics and the stomach mouths on the nightmares. This is most likely due to Crying Child seeing a kid, most likely Elizabeth, getting snatched by one of the animatronics. This may not be the thing that got him killed, but it certainly led to the events that caused it. If he didn't see it happen, he wouldn't have been crying in the head of the animatronic, which wouldn't have made the spring locks fail, which would have saved his life. This leads back to Michael because, well, he knows what the nightmare animatronics look like, which I'll get into later. And he even wrote something indicating what could have truly happened to the Crying Child, which I will also talk about later. Trust me, it's worth it. And it's 7, robot theory. The robot theory was presented in Top 10 Afton family theories. You should go check that out. However, in that theory, I propose that every Afton family member ends up becoming a robot. Mrs. Afton, or the mother, was the inspiration for Ballora. Elizabeth possesses Baby, William becomes Springtrap, and Michael becomes Enard. However, Crying Child was the one wild card. Scott loves parallels. He loves making things like this work, and this is too good not to work. If Scott saw what he was doing, he would make it his mission to make Michael and Crying Child robots. And he did this by making Michael the animatronic version of Crying Child after he dies at the hands of Fredbear. Want more proof? And at 6, Step Closer. The story Step Closer from the 4th Fazbear Frights book to some may blow my theory out of the water, thanks to MatPat connecting the big brother from this story to Michael. However, there is too much in the security logbook for this to make sense. I also noticed the detail not everyone would connect. In fact, it was so brushed off, MatPat mentioned it only because he got amputated. The big brother in Step Closer ends up in the hospital after being hit by a car. It's unexpected and sudden, but he ends up on a surgery table because they need an eye and an arm. Similar to how Crying Child ended up in the hospital as a result of his injuries in FNAF 4. Getting hit by a car could very well be what happened to the Crying Child, and what we see are just fake memories. Halfway through number 5, Security Breach Parallel. There is also a parallel between the Afton family and the animatronics from Security Breach. At least the characters from Security Breach, they're not all animatronics. So far in the family we've seen William, Elizabeth, Crying Child, and Michael, all of which have a representation in the newest game. William is of course Vanny, since he's taken over Vanessa's mind, and they've become similar because of that. Then there's Vanessa, her parallel is Elizabeth, since they both have blonde hair and green eyes, and are more like their father than they realize, because one got possessed by William, and the other possessed an animatronic made by William and killed Henry for William. Both look similar and kill for William. Then there's Michael and the Crying Child. We're pairing them because they're one and the same, and so is the game, since their versions are Gregory, the kid we play as for Crying Child, and Glam Rock Freddy for Michael. The animatronic robot. That protects us like an older brother. That we hide inside when we're in danger. Coincidence? I think not! Scott doesn't do coincidence. Gregory literally hides inside of Glamrock Freddy like how Crying Child is inside of Michael because he is a robot version of his adult self. He looks like William because he was made to look like William, because he was his son, and William just figured that he'd grow up to look like him. And then Fourth Closet. The novel The Fourth Closet is the basis for this theory. It didn't start here, but this introduced the idea of people secretly being robots into the series. Since in this book, the main character is revealed to be one in a series of 4 robots designed by Henry after his daughter died so she could keep on living. She was given fake memories that Henry made with a camera, where she had a twin that was kidnapped when they were babies. Wait a minute, doesn't that sound awfully familiar? Being given fake memories about having another sibling when it was really you who suffered the tragedy, but then you were built into a robot? Why would Michael be given fake memories of killing his brother, you say? To make him feel so guilty that he didn't step foot in a Fazbear restaurant. How do we know he feels guilty? Well, for one, he obviously would since he was programmed with emotions, but also because of something he wrote in the logbook that I'll get to shortly. Getting close to the end into number 3, put you back together. The line "I will put you back together" has been debated for ages, ever since the release of FNAF 4. The line was originally believed to be spoken by William, but later on was thought to be psychic friend Fredbear. He's here, he's there. However, I still believe this to be William, who is making a promise to his son before pulling the plug. He already lost one kid to his wickedness, he won't lose another. So he takes him off life support and brings him home, uses his agony to power a new robot and implanting it with memories that will cause him to stay away from the place that did him harm, to keep him away from William's wickedness. He makes this one older and makes him think he killed his younger brother even if by accident. He names him Michael, but later on he will learn that that wasn't his true name, since at the end of Sister Location we hear Michael say, "I should be dead, but I'm not." That's not him talking about Enard ejecting itself, that's talking about his past life as Crying Child, whatever his name ends up being. Penultimately in number 2, Nightmare. Nightmare is the main boss of FNAF 4, some could say the main antagonist. At first we thought he was the embodiment of death, but to win the game we need to survive him, but when we win the game, we die. How would that make sense? Simple, he was never meant to be death. Ultimate Custom Night proves that with his voice lines. Lines like, "You will not be spared, you will not be saved." But why would he say this to William unless someone had escaped it before? Escaped what, you ask? Quote again. "I am your wickedness, made of flesh." He's talking to William. We know this since Michael isn't wicked. But who would have survived William's wickedness? The one you should not have killed was killed, clearly. So who could it be? Crying Child. He was spared. He was saved by William, who fears what he did to his own kids, which we know thanks to "The Shadow Fears Me," another one of Nightmare's kill lines. "The shadow fears me." William's wickedness resulted in both of his kids getting killed, which makes him fear it happening again, hence why he gave Michael memories that would make him avoid going back there, until he learns the truth, because of, or just before, Sister Location. Finally, in number 1, Security Logbook. The Security Logbook is one of the most complicated pieces of lore-breaking code we have ever gotten. It revealed that Michael knew what Nightmare looked like, and that he knows about exotic butters and casual bongos, but then it proves that Michael chews too much gum, something shared with the Step Closer brother, and others feel like the book is haunted by 2 spirits, like how Michael is 2 people. All signs point to me being right, however. Let me go over them. The book starts off saying saying that it was previously owned by Mike. Clear connection there, but he also draws in red ink, keep this in mind. The book is possessed by a spirit working to try to get him to remember, saying things like, "Do you remember your name?" Of course I do, I wrote it. Wait, but I crossed it out. Almost like that's not my name. The spirit also asks, was your favorite childhood toy a purple plastic telephone? Yes, it was, but it wasn't mine, it was my brother's, wasn't it? He was also asked what he would like to win as a child. The question is specifically phrased, if you were a child, what prizes do you want to see behind the prize counter? And then he draws a vacation with arrows pointing to cash, a jet ski, waterboards, and fun, which could be a subtle reference to Agents of S.H.I.E.L.D., since Agent Coulson was implanted with false memories of going to Tahiti when he was dead and resurrected with robot technology. Not only that, but there is also another arrow pointing to the page number that says my name, indicating that he would like to win his own name. The next page references Clara from Immortal and the Restless, indicating that he watches the show, like he does in Sister Location. And the page after that asks him if he remembers his name. The page after, he draws a gravestone, which the spirit writes my name on. Why would the spirit be telling me my name is on a gravestone? I'm right here. Later on, he draws Nightmare from FNAF 4, something he wouldn't know unless he saw it, since Crying Child was in a coma when he saw these animatronics. And on page 62, he draws a Freddy Fazbear logo with blood surrounding Freddy's mouth, clearly showing he vividly remembers when he killed his brother and feels guilty, since on page 99, when asked about the excuses he would give to customers if they said my son says Freddy bit him, he would respond with, he tripped and fell on Freddy's teeth, not our fault, which is probably what William made him think he said when he found him, even though that might have been what actually happened originally. Hell, he may have gotten scooped himself and that's why he knows the stomach mouths, although that's highly unlikely. The spirits tell us the party was for you, but according to others, another spirit already responded by altering text. No, he didn't. These aren't spirits possessing the book and controlling what it says. They're hallucinations, either due to Enard inside him or extreme fatigue due to all the stress of working at Fazbear Entertainment. He was seeing these things because the spirit of the crying child, the pure agony that makes the robot part function, is crying for help, desperately trying to get him to remember that the party was for him and remember his name. Why else would he keep saying this after the other spirit responded? The spirit responds saying it was for me on page 89, but later on page 99 it says the party was for you. Again, it was for you. Michael, the party was for you. Now wake up and see it. And he does, since after Sister Location he tells his father that he put her back together like he said, but William was trapped in Fazbear Fright, so how could he have said that? He did, just before Michael died, as Crying Child. And he says I should be dead, but I'm not.
But something is wrong with me. I should be dead, but I'm not.
Because he was brought back as a robot, hence why he stays put at the end of FNAF 6, as William says in his final speech.
My brave volunteer, who somehow found this job listing not intended for you. Although there was a way out planned for you, I have a feeling that's not what you want. I have a feeling that you are right where you want to be.
In a 10, bullying. Not talking about what it led to, but specifically the tormenting of the younger brother. While common among siblings, especially in media, this is just damn cruel. I mean, like, even Roderick wouldn't have ripped off one of Greg's plushy heads and then tormented him with it. So the bullying here is a damn shame. And honestly, the fact that William did nothing to reprimand his son for tormenting his other son only makes this worse, I'm sure. Which eventually caused him to escalate, and essentially escalate so much that, well, we all know what happened. But even without that, brothers who torment their younger brothers like that are cruel. Like, I tormented my sister, but I didn't like destroy her stuff so I could use it as a mask to then scare her even more. And I'm sure that he doesn't like just wear it to scare Crying Child either. He probably just walks around with it on the regular just to make his younger brother mad, since, you know, he's wearing your stuffed animal's face. And at 9, encouraging Gregory. Assuming that Glamrock Freddy is possessed by Michael, even if I don't think it's likely, Michael, as Glamrock Freddy, straight up encourages Gregory to risk his life in order to get out of the Pizzaplex, when in all honesty the safest thing to do would be to just keep him either in your stomach or in your green room until 6 a.m. Especially after the doors closed and he was definitely stuck. There was no need for this daycare, secret escape, hatch escape plan thing, okay? You could have just gone back the way you came and everything would have been fine. You would not have been suspicious since you'd have at least appeared like you listened to Vanessa and went back to your green room, and then Gregory would have been safe, especially after
after you knew that there was a crazy bunny running around looking to slaughter people. So yeah, if Glamrock Freddy is possessed by Michael, he did a horrible job at protecting his surrogate younger brother, which kinda hurts the whole he protects Gregory because of crying child thing, doesn't it? And it ain't listened to his father. Now, this takes a bit of assuming, but less than assuming that Glam Freddy is possessed, so it's gonna be a spot higher. We learn in Michael's final speech in Sister Location that he went to find his sister because his father asked him to, saying something along the lines of, "I did it, I put her back together, just like you asked me to," which is yes in reference to Baby, but the issue I have with this is why did he listen to his father? I don't think he learned about the horrible things his father did because of Baby. Like, I think he must have learned about it beforehand, maybe when he got Crying Child killed since he was freaking out because the animatronic jaw should not have been able to crush his skull, and even if he didn't know about what William was doing, honestly that could make this point even worse. Like, what other things did William ask his son to do, either while he was stuck in Fazbear's Fright or before that Michael did without question? That's a thought that really worries me, and maybe Michael has more to repent for than just hurting his brother. In at 7, Bad Babysitter. Now, while we don't know the details about what's going on inside the Midnight Motorist minigame, although I think we kind of figured it out, link to that video is in the iCard, I think it's safe to say that this is the Afton family, and particularly the Afton males. Seemingly, Michael was babysitting Crying Child while their father was at work, but Michael was just watching TV and not his little brother, which allowed his little bro to break his window and go to the pizza place yet again, which I'm sure made his father so angry that when he got his son back home, he wasn't the nice father I'm sure he pretends to be. So Michael's negligence ended up getting his little brother in trouble and God knows what else, because all he wanted to do was watch his show, which is possibly Immortal and the Restless, which makes this even worse because it's a fucking soap opera. And before any of you get mad at me and tell me that this isn't freaking Michael, okay, the one who tells William to go easy on Crying Child is most definitely Michael and not William's wife, since this is after William started killing, so his wife was gone. Plus, it's the same gray shirt that Michael wears at like literally all the time, and he's in front of the same TV that we sit in front of in Sister Location. That's about as clear cut as the series gets. And at 6, Walking Corpse. Now, Sister Location also ends with a scene of Michael walking around town literally purple and smelling god awful. Some see this as his body rotting thanks to the animatronic parts inside him. I like to think that it's because the robotic parts inside him are beating up his inside so much that it's causing severe bruising, because never have I once seen a decaying body be shown as purple in color. Every version of rotting corpses, especially like living corpses, with zombies being the most common example when rotting, are shown as green in cartoons, like Minecraft zombies for instance, or Plants vs. Zombies. So the purple in reality just can't be decay, because it just doesn't work, it doesn't make sense. But if it is the case, walking around in public smelling like that is a crime in and of itself. Holy crap. And if it's not the case, this man obviously hasn't showered in ages, and whether that's due to a personal choice or the choice of the animatronics inside him, damn, it's still a horrifying mistake. A damn shame is what it is. Halfway through into number 5, Burning. FNAF 6 is a pretty good game. It was something new and probably the most interactive FNAF game we've ever had since we got to make our own pizzeria. But the ending, while good and one of the most iconic speeches of all time, Michael letting himself go up in flames as well as the whole pizzeria is seriously dumb on his part. Like, bro, you've seen your father come back to life just as many times as anyone else. Like, at least keep kicking around for another year or two to make sure he's actually dead instead of just hoping he is. You know that this man is as relentless as Taco Bell after a night of binge drinking, yet you let it go. Just think about things. I wish for once one person in this series would actually think something through. And Henry encouraging him to stay just also seems like a bad idea to me. Straight up. Like, I get that you want nobody to remember this, but unless you've killed the parents of all the victims or everyone who's ever covered the story in the media, people are always going to remember this. So just stay alive, okay? Make sure the story is over, and then you can off yourself. Both Michael and Henry, honestly. God. And at 4, Animatronic Escape. Going to investigate a secret underground facility when your homicidal maniac of a father asks you to is one thing. It's another thing when you become the vessel through which 5 separate animatronics escape into the outside world to begin wreaking havoc. Like, sure, you couldn't really help it, but the canon ending to the game is seemingly the one where you listen to Baby and then end up getting scooped. So in actuality, Michael was being just a big old dum-dum here. After everything, you should know that the possessed animatronics, even if if they are possessed by your sister are a bad idea, especially if you've been through the other locations already and have been attacked by those very same haunted animatronics. Have you never seen an episode of Supernatural? Like, every spirit is a vengeful spirit after this long, bro. Come on. Just salt and burn the animatronic and then go home. Wait, could the whole, like, remnant needs to burn thing be referenced to Supernatural? I hope so. Getting close to the end, and in number 3 left his sister. Now, don't get me wrong. Allowing yourself to be a vessel for a group of evil bags is one thing. I really felt like Dean Winchester there for a minute. But the other ending doesn't actually let Michael off the hook either. In the other ending, the non-canon one, I'm guessing, where Enard attacks you while you're watching Immortal and the Restless, you end up actually leaving your sister in the underground storage facility for dead. Well, not for dead since she's already possessing an animatronic, but you know what I mean. You didn't even try to set her free. And assuming that that's what you did in the previous games, you already know how to set them free. So like, why didn't you set your sister free? Yeah, that's what I thought. Okay, my sister and I, we don't always see eye to eye. Sometimes she can't take my hilarious jokes and my brilliant sense of humor, but I'd still release her soul if it was trapped inside a 6-foot-tall giant robot. Okay, I would. But this man just leaves. And we know that he knows it's Elizabeth. He just doesn't care. What a great big brother this guy is. You already screwed over one sibling, why not the other one too, right? Speaking of which, and ultimately, in at number 2, Chom. I think we all know that Michael is certainly at least partially responsible for the bite of 83. Because while William did superpower the Fredbear jaw, if Michael hadn't put his brother's head in the mouth, it wouldn't have mattered. While yes, he thought that he'd be safe because it's an animatronic mouth, how bad can it really be? He still definitely contributed to Crying Child's death. It's interesting the way that like fate works. In this instance, we can really blame anyone for the death of Crying Child, because I am absolutely certain at the very least Michael blamed himself at the beginning. After learning what William was up to and what he did to the animatronic, maybe the guilt lifted slightly, but all that it would really do was assure himself that he didn't have the intention on killing his brother. But either way, without him, nobody would have put his head in the animatronic mouth. But yeah, getting your little bro chomped is definitely gonna cause some friction among the family members. Especially when, because of that, you're the only 2 family members left. And finally, and at number 1, nothing. Michael Afton's biggest sin in my mind is his ability to do nothing. Like, sure, he seems to be playing the good guy, going after his father and trying to undo his deeds, but really, Michael to me just seems like he's been playing hero this whole time while not actually doing anything. Sure, he says he's trying to right his father's wrongs and whatnot, but looking at him, he's not doing it because he's a good person. He seems to be doing it because he just feels bad and not because of some higher moral code. He blames himself for getting his brother killed, which subsequently means that anything he does to try and fix that is just to make himself feel better about it, because in the end, nothing's gonna bring his little brother back. And if anything, the FNAF 3 Happiest Day minigame is because of Henry, not Michael. And you know what? This guy, he doesn't have the balls to actually end his father once and for all. He says that he's gonna go come find him in the final scene of Sister Location, but then when he does, he's not the one to burn the place down, okay? Henry's the one who does that. Henry is the only one who's able to actually sack up and do anything about this. I mean, he does it in a horribly stupid way, but he still at least does something. If Michael really wanted to make sure that William was stopped, like I said earlier in the list, he wouldn't have let himself burn. He would have stayed alive, made sure that his dad was dead, made sure that his old man had kicked the animatronic-filled bucket, and then offed himself. But he lets himself burn so that he won't have to deal with knowing what his father did and live with the regret of hurting his brother. So, yeah, he didn't really do anything.